Beyond that, some new news came down today of this. I think this is so interesting. Obviously, I know I had to deal with Spotify at a point, and Spotify is completely off of these exclusive deals, right? Like, it's kind of interesting because when I was like getting out of or like eventually the conversation with Spotify kind of turned to what Joe just signed, but they wasn't offering me like allegedly. Okay, let me bring it back to set the story up right. So Spotify has re-upped their deal with Joe Rogan. And their deal with Joe Rogan is wild lucrative still, allegedly worth about $250 million. We don't have full confirmation on it. Joe Rogan, $250. But everybody's reporting the number $250 million. Even Variety, they're saying the deal is worth up until $250 million. And it will no longer be exclusive to the platform. Now, this is like only Joe Rogan could get this, and this is going to fuck up the entire game. So you have to realize Spotify is now just trying to make money via the podcast. And this podcast is the most popular podcast in the world. They are looking at it like this. And honestly, truthfully, this is how, and just for me and from a business perspective, you always have to know where you land in business when it comes to these companies. I think Spotify, they had a goal. They probably said, hey, we're going to get hammered in the stock prices this and third for a while, but we're going to make these investments because we want to be the leader. And actually, that's what they wanted. They wanted to be the leader in podcast listen. Previously, it was Apple. They spent a lot of money to get these exclusive podcasts. They got Joe before me. They got me, which was their hip-hop podcast. They had some in-house stuff as well. They have Joe Rogan, obviously, which is the big dog. I think what their whole thing was, let's get people to the platform. Now, here's the thing. They stopped doing exclusives. The reason being is I think they've reached the point of diminishing returns. There's nobody else they could sign to bring more people to the platform. By the way, if they already have Joe Rogan for like 3-4 years, if you're a Joe Rogan fan and you haven't moved over to Spotify, you'll never come. You get what I mean? And I think that's what they thought as well, even when it comes to hip-hop. If you listen to hip-hop and you watch the Joe Budden podcast or you like Akademiks and we signed them and we've had those niggas combined for 4 years as well, right? If you've never came over to Spotify to listen to podcasts, you won't come, period. You know what I mean? So at this point, they're now working their new business model. Their new business model is becoming a podcast company, which is kind of like it's going to shake everything up. They're now saying not only are we a DSP, we want to become a podcast company. Let me tell you how it works with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is so popular. Joe Rogan's success always helped every other podcast that they signed, including me at the time. For example, and this is just leveraging across networks. Like, hey, if y'all want to add on Joe Rogan's show, you got to buy ads for these other 45 shows, and one might include my show. So you force the advertisers to advertise everywhere, right? Not only just one show. There's probably mad people would be like, no, we just only want Joe Rogan. No. You can't just get Joe Rogan. Not only are you going to pay premium prices, maybe like $1 million for, I don't know what the rates would necessarily be, but it's a wild amount. Definitely 7 figures, right? But they probably say you got to buy ads on other things, like whether it's, random like ad. If it's music, you have to just advertise with banners on the site, but on the app, you have to advertise with these podcasts or whatever the case is. Now, here's where I think they're going to try to make this money back, because anytime a company gives you money, how do they make it back? This is like, I don't even think that's daring, even though $250 million is a lot of money. I think this is going to be the first time that Spotify tries to leverage other platforms and the reach of Joe Rogan to get even more money per ad, buy. So, for example, this is alleged numbers that was reported. I've seen it some places that when Joe Rogan drops a podcast, on average, 11 million people listen. That is wild, right? And this is on the Spotify app. So like 11 million people are listening to every episode. He's dropping them 4 times a week. Now, here's the thing. If he starts publishing to other platforms, now keep in mind, for people to get access to those 11 million listeners, they used to charge whatever amount of money. Let's say $1 million for like 2 ad reads or 3 ad reads or whatever the case is, right? Now, if you allow him to drop his podcast elsewhere, the numbers are going to go up. Every episode, the average won't be 11 million. The average might be 25 million. So what they did is they are the sole controller of ads that could be on his podcast. So what they're going to do now is just sell across other platforms, and they're going to make their money back, which is, again, their first goal to sign podcasters were bring your audience to Spotify. This deal has shown that they're past that, but they think that this one guy, and I think it's only him, maybe call her daddy, but definitely just only him. Like nobody who's definitely less. Like, they believe they could give him $250 million. I don't know, maybe for 2-3 years, and make that back without forcing him to only be on one fucking site. Because at that point, they used to think about like future subscriptions from new users and maybe ads that they would procure themselves. Now it's like, bro, if you're a Joe Rogan fan that didn't come over already, like, again, they're still in business with him, so they're not going to have a mass exodus. They're not going to like unsubscribe because he's still going to be there. And I'm pretty sure they're going to put like some segments that he has to do only with Spotify. Like, hey, cool, on the Friday show, you have to have half only on Spotify. So his audience is going to be incentivized to stay. But now he could take advantage of Joe Rogan literally is more popular than the biggest TV host on network cable news channel, whether it's CNN or Fox News. So now he could get his numbers up more, sell ads for even more ridiculous rate, and if they do a good job of it enough, I don't even think it's like a gamble. I think they're going to make their money back more than $250 million, right? So this is a Joe Rogan only deal. I'll read a little bit more about it. This is on Variety. It says Spotify inked a new multi-year partnership deal with controversial podcasts. It's a Joe Rogan experience, which is said to be worth up to $250 million. On a new pact, Rogan's popular show, which has been exclusively available to Spotify for 3 years, will now be available on other audio platforms. In addition to continued availability on Spotify, his show will be available on additional services, including Apple, which is their competitor, Amazon Music, and YouTube. The move comes under Spotify's revised strategy to give up exclusive streaming rights in favor of broader distribution, which the company kicked off in 2023. The Wall Street Journal first reported Spotify's renewal with Rogan. Spotify said it'll work closely with Rogan and his team to continue to maximize the audience of the show across platforms. Under the new pact, Spotify will handle the distribution and ad sales for the podcast. Okay. So by the way, Spotify has now gotten into distribution. They own Megaphone and Anchor, which are Spotify owned companies, but they're distributors of podcasts. So maybe that's a play also to get those companies more lit or more attention or more signups, that they become a major player in the distribution realm for podcasts, right? Rogan will receive a guaranteed minimum fee from Spotify as well, a cut of advertising revenue, okay? They became exclusive to Spotify in 2020 deal, which confirmed was more than $200 million over 3.5 years. His show is ranked as the most popular show on the platform for the last 3 years. And yeah, cool. All right. This is a great deal, man. Now, if you're probably saying, how the fuck is this nigga like really worth that much? Look, Joe Rogan YouTube. If you go to like his YouTube, and, under the last deal he had, he could put up certain clips, but he couldn't put up the full episodes on YouTube. But even a clip would do 500,000 in 11 hours. Like, he's just wildly popular, right? You go back, like, you'll see a bunch of million, 2 million, million. Like, even for 10 minutes of him, 1 million people are still watching on YouTube. So, like, this guy's audience is pretty vast. Right, he has 60 million followers on this, and I think there's wasn't there some other? I feel like there was some other Oh, okay. No, this was the main page. I thought there was another YouTube page. But shit, that's great. That's great. So this is Joe Rogan only deal. We're gonna see what happens to everybody as their exclusive deals kind of end. I'm gonna lie, like right now I have people trying to sign us for an exclusive deal with Off the Record. Honestly, I'm not that interested. Honestly, like just where I'm trying to go with content in general. My content is just not a podcast. Not saying I'm not doing a podcast. My content isn't just, oh, I'm doing a podcast for you. Like I'm looking at content as a content house, like content as in the academy. That's really my goal now. So I know my agent and my lawyer probably don't like to hear that because they've been hitting me like, yo, we have this opportunity. Would you consider a deal with blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, it's not that I won't, but that's not the main priority. But I could sound like a hypocrite because I'm definitely going to take the meeting. So anyway, yeah, so there's still a few companies that's still like interested. I don't even know if it's exclusives. They're still interested in some podcast deals. I don't know if it's just general distribution, but we'll see what those are. Anyway, Joe Rogan is one of the first big dominoes to fall in the podcast market. I did tell y'all this a long time ago. We are in the height of the streaming market, right? So, for example, the streaming deals are given out in masses right now. I do think like in about a year from now or 2 years from now, those streaming deals are going to scale back. And it's going to be like, yo, we're going to only keep the top 5%, right? Everybody else is shit. Nice to meet you, right? And what's happening with podcasting now is, so Joe Rogan is the first one to fall, or not fall, but like he's the first domino to kind of let people know, hey, listen, exclusives are done, right? Now what we're gonna have to see is Call Her Daddy signs Spotify. We're gonna see what happens with them. Now, if you ask me, I think Spotify is gonna offer a similar deal to them. Okay. Oh shit. Never mind. Look, 2 days ago, Spotify's Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy is no longer exclusive to Spotify, right? So we don't know if they re-upped. She had initially signed to Spotify in 2021 for a 3-year, $60 million deal that should have ended in or should be ended this year. So what they probably did is they probably reworked her deal, probably still offered her a lot of money. She's super popular, but popular among probably one of the most lucrative demographics when it comes to podcasting, which are women, middle-aged white women, right? You know, women actually spend way more money than men. Usually, people know like women spend the most money in a household. Women spend way more money than men when it comes to like, you know, podcasts or like advertising that might be with the podcast. So I do think they're going to keep her as well. So they're going to give her some money. I don't know if it's going to be 60 mil. Maybe they'd be like, hey, listen, we'll give you 30 and you can split the ads with us, but we'll allow you to drop your shit elsewhere as well, right? Daddy Gang, Rejoice, Alex Cooper, Call Her Daddy hit interview podcast is now available on all major audio platforms after 2.5 years exclusively on Spotify. Full episodes of Call Her Daddy have been available on Spotify since the 2021 in July under a 3-year deal worth more than $60 million. As of this week, the audio-only version of Cooper's hosted show is now available on Apple Podcasts. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of exactly what happened, you know. Everybody had their run, you know, it's good. But this is even greater for the game because some of those podcasts that went exclusive, if they're making great content, they'll even be more popular because people are listening to podcasts at a greater rate. So that's good for Joe Rogan. That's good for her, especially knowing that Spotify wants to keep them to some degree. Okay. All right, bet. Yeah. So the podcast business game is in a different place. I'm wondering how that domino is going to fall. Well, actually, not to give up people's business secrets and shit like that. If you've listened to the majority of like podcasts or like podcast networks, what they've been all doing is very low minimum guarantees. So the MG is pretty low. They'll be like, hey, we'll guarantee you $100,000, right? And then we'll split ads. Like that's pretty much the business model of anybody who's still doing podcast deals, right? We'll offer you a minimum guaranteed, which is usually like compared to the popularity, it's a little bit either low or whatever. And then they're hoping that you'll turn up and your shit will go crazy, that they could get ads and then they'll make some money and split it with you. So business models are changing, man. I'm particularly obviously interested in this because I run an online business and I run a media business. So I'm always like have to be aware of all this shit. But shit, it's happening. All right. Yo, why is that Ice Spice line stuck in my head? Ice Spice said, "Bitches be thick, but I'm thicker." Jesus Christ, such a genius bar. All right, man. All right, how y'all feeling? Shout out to Tony Talks. All right, let me see what y'all saying on the King Academics page.